So mute your computer. Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's Learn at Work webinar. Thank you for your patience as we work through some tech issues. We are going to do something a little different. The speaker is going to actually speak through my telephone and advance his slides on his own in his location. You know, we all have to be patient with technology. So I'm going to turn it over. I'm Karen Jacobs. I'll be the moderator today. And let me turn it over to our speaker. And if I could ask attendees to just write in the chat box that you can hear us, that would be fabulous. And again, welcome. I'm turning this over to our speaker now.
Hi, good afternoon. Sorry for the technical issues. So my presentation today is impact of psychosocial factors on workplace accommodation requests among individuals with mental disabilities. Okay, so here's an overview of my presentation. We'll start with the introduction and then with the methods, results, discussion, implications. And also I'll leave some time for questions and answers. So there is a high prevalence of mental health disorders among US general populations. Actually, according to a report by Censor 2018, there is about 11 million people with various types of mental health disorders. And people with mental health disorders have a various employment challenges. And so, for example, only about a tenth or a fourth of adults with severe mental health disorders obtain competitive employment. And the lack of employment really have very negative impacts on people's lives in terms of their self-esteem, in terms of their well-being, and also financial security and the general mental health. So the American with Disabilities Act and its Amendment Act prohibit discrimination against individuals with disabilities, also including those with mental health issues. And people with mental health issues, actually there's a lot of, because it's invisible nature, they experience a lot of workplace challenges. So ADA require employer to provide accommodation if such accommodation was necessary to allow an employee to perform the essential functions of their job. Also, these accommodations does not cause undue hardship for employer. And workplace accommodation is defined as any change or adjustment to a job or work environment that allow a qualified applicant or employee with disability to participate in all aspects of employment equal to those of employees without disabilities. As you probably know, there is many type of workplace accommodations people can, with mental health issues, they often use and request. So for example, like flexible work schedules, such as frequent and extended breaks, modification to job structures and duties, so reassigning of the job duties and also job structure, and also modified supervision and also training activities. So there is various research has demonstrated the importance of workplace accommodations. Accommodation plays a very important role in assisting people with disabilities to get a job and also stay on the job. For example, like enhanced job maintenance. Also, there is increased productivity for people with disabilities, and also reduction in terms of the turnover among staff. And also with the accommodations, they also can stimulate people to be more committed to their companies and organizations. So in general, the workplace accommodations is relatively cost effective and easy to implement. But with that being said, there is still under accommodations, basically under request of accommodations, but also there is a resistance of providing accommodations to people with mental health disabilities, disorders in the workplace. So because of this lack of accommodations or under accommodations, the actual benefits and protection for people with disabilities under the employment provisions of ADA could not be fully realized. So as I mentioned, there is a high rate of unemployment and low job retentions among people with mental health issues. So under accommodations really can serve as a barrier for equal employment, especially for people with mental health issues. So maybe we will ask why there is under accommodations. I think there's many factors we trigger and contribute to this. Some of them can be related to the lack of workplace support and also less of understanding of the severity of mental health issues. So people may treat mental health issues as people irresponsible for their work, for their job, and maybe tardiness or laziness, rather than looking into the nature of how the disabilities might impact their work, which require assistance from the workplace. And also, employers may lack of the knowledge on disabilities and accommodations. Because of the invisible nature of mental health issues, some employers may not really understanding how the disability might impact their work performance or job functions. So they may be more reluctant not to provide the accommodations. And then also there is a factors on the employee's perspective of fear of stigma and discriminations. So again, this maybe relates to the invisible nature, or maybe relates to the lack of knowledge from the employee's perspective. They may not feel the confidence or their eligibilities to request for accommodations under the ADA's protection. So you can see there is a various factors which might impact the under accommodations from the workplace perspective, from the employer side, and also from the employees. So you can see there is some social and cognitive perspective related to the workplace accommodation process. So the social cognitive career theories can really provide a very a unique lens of looking at the accommodation request process for people with mental health issues. So the social cognitive career theory is a theoretical model that specifically addresses career or job-related activities and behavior. So actually there is three main components under this theory. The first is self-efficacy, the second is outcome expectancies, and the third is affect. Self-efficacy is the belief about one's competencies to successfully perform certain behaviors or courses of action. So in this case, how a person's their belief and perceptions about their ability to accomplish something may influence their actual behavior. So for example, if a person thinks that they have the ability to request accommodations, then it's more likely they can put that into action. And then the outcome expectancy is belief about the outcome of given actions. So for example, if I ask for something and I assume that there is high expectancies of applying from the employers, then I'm more likely to request. And also if there is less of a personal cost of relating to my request, there's also high likelihood. And also the appropriateness of one's request can also be an important component. And the affect one's feelings and emotions is also important, especially in the accommodation request process. As we know that accommodation request process sometimes can be an emotionally loaded process because there is a social process, how people may be perceived by their peers in the workplace. So one's feelings and emotions, according to the social cognitive care theory, can serve as a filter how self-efficacies and outcome expectations can impact their job-related activities and behavior. So there's various types of literature that has talked about the accommodation request among people with disabilities. For example, using demographic factors, various demographic factors, also the workplace support, in looking at the relationship between those factors and people's requesting or not requesting accommodations. But there is a very limited research looking from the social cognitive career theory perspective. According to my best knowledge, I think there are only 2 studies that has been done looking at the self-efficacies, outcome expectancies, and positive effect on people's intention to request workplace accommodation. So as you can see from the results of this study, there is a positive relationship between these factors and the workplace accommodations request. And actually, these 3 factors accounted about 50 or 55% of the variance in intention to request accommodations. Additionally, self-efficacy mediate the relationship between positive affect and intention to request accommodations. And also, outcome expectations mediate the relationship between self-efficacy and the intention to request accommodations. So, as you can see, these factors seems to play a very important role in understanding about people's accommodation request behaviors. Although this research has provided some light in terms of understanding the impact of these factors on workplace accommodations, but there is actually, according to my knowledge, there is no study has comprehensively examined the impacts of these psychosocial and the along with demographic factors on requesting workplace accommodations among individuals with mental health issues, mental health disabilities. So according to the ADDIE 2018, suggested that the examining people with disabilities as homogeneous group may impede us from capturing the experiences of groups with specific type of disabilities. So I think it's very important to understand how these factors may play a role in requesting accommodations among people with mental health issues, especially considering the invisible nature of mental health issues. So the research question, I have 2 research questions for this project, for this study. One is, what are the type of workplace accommodation requested or considered but did not request by people with mental disabilities? The second question is, what are the impacts of psychosocial factors, basically a self-efficacy, outcome expectancies, affect, and also the workplace support. Workplace support means how they get support from the supervisors, from the peers, from the workplace in general, and also along with demographic factors on requesting accommodations among individuals with mental disabilities. So here is some information about the participants. You can see that altogether there are 148 participants. You can see the breakdown in terms of the gender. Majority of the participants are female. And again, in terms of race, also break down into different categories. Caucasian, white was with around 75%. In terms of the educations, majority of the people, participants in this study with a bachelor or more degrees, a bachelor or more education levels. In terms of the work status, about around 60% of people work full-time. Work level, around 72% non-management levels, while the remaining are either low management or with middle or upper management levels. I also break it down in terms of the age as well. So in general, the population seems to be relatively highly educated, Caucasian, female, also work full-time. Yeah. So I will talk about the implications of the nature of the participants later on. So in terms of the inclusion criteria, there are 3 inclusion criteria. First is all the people need the self-reported mental health disabilities, need workplace accommodations in the past 3 months before they participate in the study. The reason we list the 3 months is because of the nature of the mental health issues, just to be on the safe side, that the 3 months period, hopefully that will help their memories is fresh and the information they collected is accurate. And all the participants need to be 18 years of age or older. As I mentioned before, the sample size is 148. The participants were recruited from multiple sources, including National Mental Health Clearinghouse, Mental Health Supported Employment Programs, National Empowered Centers. So I contacted director of above agencies and asked them to invite their constituencies to participate in this study. So basically, those persons I contacted, they helped to put up my research request over their websites or e-newsletters or listserv. So there is an online survey administration, so including various measures, which I will introduce shortly. So the online survey includes demographic information such as gender, age, race, education, management levels, and work status, which I just show in the participants' tables, which I just showed now. And then in addition to those demographic factors, I also collected a few measures. The first one is the self-efficacy. So under the self-efficacy, I have 2 sub measures. One is accommodation request self-efficacy. So basically, how people their belief about their ability to request accommodations. Actually, there are the measure I use is 4 items, adopted 4 items. And so one of the survey items is discussing my accommodations needs with my employers. So participants will rate their abilities, on a 5-point Likert scale, not at all competent or very competent. So the alpha level for this study is 0.82. The other self-efficacy I use is work goal self-efficacy. Basically, assessing people's their abilities about setting up goals for their work. Again, there are 4 items, and one of the sample items is possessing the necessary skills to attain my work goal. Again, is rated on a 5-point Likert scale, and the alpha level is pretty high. So for the outcome expectancy, I have 3 measures, 3 sub-measures under the outcome expectancy. The first one is anticipated accommodation compliance. Basically, how, if I ask for accommodations, how I would presume a person will either comply or deny my request. There are 3 items under this measure. if I requested accommodations, I will likely receive it. Again, it's rated on the 5-point Likert scale, asking people to show their either agree or disagree with the statement. Again, the alpha level is pretty high as well. The perceived personal cost is item related. If they request accommodations, how they will feel about themselves. One of the items included here is, I would feel inadequate or incomplete if I ask for this accommodation. Again, it is rated on 5-point Likert scale. I reverse this construct. So instead of like using it as perceived social cost, in my analysis, I convert it as the absence of personal cost, which I will explain a little bit later. The third sub-construct under outcome expectancies is help-seeking appropriateness. Basically, how appropriate levels of accommodation a person may perceive about their request. Most people at the workplace would approve of me requesting these accommodations. So the internal consistency and reliability is also 0.96. The other measure is the positive and negative effect. Actually, the original scale has 20 items. So in order to reduce the cost, reduce the burden for people to complete the survey, I took 5 items from each from positive and also from negative. And again, it is rated on the 5-point Likert scale, and the internal consistency is 0.87. The workplace support measure is, there are 6 items. One item example is, my company has this disability-friendly environment in terms of recruitment, employing persons with disabilities. And also the internal consistency is also very high. So in terms of the data analysis, for research question number 1, I use frequency analysis to assess the people's frequency of what accommodation they requested, and also accommodation they did not request. The second research question, I use logistic regression because the outcome variable is either people request or not request. So I use the logistic regression. So here's the results in terms of workplace accommodation, either people requested or not requested. So on the very left column, you can see the different type of accommodations people indicated. Either they, for example, like flexible schedule, job restructuring, assistive technology, assistance by others, telework, physical alteration to buildings and office space, reassignment to another job. So I break down the participants either to those people who requested accommodation and also those people who did not request. So among all the participants, 105 people requested, and also 43 did not request. So you can see that actually, if you add the numbers together, they may more than add the percentage together, they will exceed 100% because people, they may choose multiple accommodations. So that's the reason. So you can see from here, either in terms of people requested or not requested, the top 3 accommodations are pretty similar. They are flexible schedule, jobs restructurings, and assistive technologies. So they were listed at top 3 among people who requested and also not requested. And here's the results table for logistic regression. So again, on the very left column, you can see the variables that I put it into the logistic regression. As I mentioned, looking at how the psychosocial factors along with demographic factors impact people's workplace accommodation behavior. So you can see there the first two are self-efficacy constructs, requesting efficacy, goal-setting efficacy, and then the compliance, appropriateness, and non-personal costs, they are related to outcome expectancy. And then the affect, positive affect and negative affect are also the affect component, the workplace support. And then rest of the variables are demographic variables. So among those psychosocial variables, there are three variables were found significant. They are self-efficacy in terms of requesting accommodations, and then outcome expectancies in terms of their perceptions about the compliance, people whether they will provide those accommodations. And then the other one is the non-personal cost. So actually, you can see on the odds ratios, there is a high possibilities if there is a high possibilities there's an increase in their self-advocacy in terms of requesting accommodations. There's also likelihood that they're more likely to request accommodations. And again, if there is a high likelihood that people perceive their supervisors' workplace will provide accommodations, there is also likelihood that they will request accommodations. And also, if people perceive there's non-personal costs in relation to their accommodation requests, they are also likely to request accommodations. And among all the demographic factors, actually only the work status was found significant. So basically, those people who work full-time were more likely to request. So basically, people who work part-time were found less likely to request accommodations. So here is the discussion. So some of the most frequently requested and considered accommodations include flexible schedule, job restructuring, assistive technologies, and systems by others. The findings from here are pretty consistent with past literatures. As you can see, most of the accommodations people either requested or considered but did not request were pretty cost effective, not costing so much, and also relatively easy to implement. So in terms of the psychosocial factor found significant in this study, a self-efficacy in requesting accommodations. And this is very important. So how to help the people enhancing their perceptions about the ability to request accommodations seems very important. And again, the outcome expectancies, the perception of employers' compliance with accommodation request, and the absence of the personal cost in requesting accommodations. This also speaks to the importance of the workplace support, how mental health is perceived in the workplace, and also maybe their internalizations of the mental health related issues that could impact their outcome expectancy, which in turn will impact their workplace accommodation behavior. The workplace status is also a very important factor because, as we know, a lot of people with disabilities, they work part-time. From what we have found today from the study is that people who work part-time were less likely to request accommodations. So that maybe could relate to some of the challenges these people are facing. For example, like the less likelihood to get a job, or also the less likelihood to stay on the job for an extended period of time. Again, these findings were pretty similar on what we found in the past literature. There are also some psychosocial factors found not significant. For example, like the outcome expectancies, appropriateness of perceptions, those settings, the affect was also not found significant. and the workplace support. I think some of the reason may be due to the little differences between those people who requested and not requested in these factors. There are several limitations for this study. First of all, it's a self-reported questionnaire. So there might be some social desirabilities, and also the accuracies of people they're responding to the test, and that can be questionable. And they also use abbreviated measures to reduce their responding burdens, but that may also impact the validities of the measures. The representative of the sample, as I mentioned, most of the people in the study, they were highly educated, working full-time, and female, and also mostly white. So this may not necessarily representing the overall populations of people with mental health issues. Again, although we use the abbreviated version of the surveys, the length of the survey may also present some issues for people with disabilities, with mental health issues. Despite these limitations, I think there are also some practical implications for this study, on the funding of this study. First, is rehabilitation counselors assist people with disabilities understanding the nature of the mental health disabilities, and also communicate the benefits of workplace accommodation. So how to help people understand their nature of disabilities and dispel biases against mental health disabilities. For example, a lot of people with disabilities, some of the disability may be labeled as, irresponsibility and tardiness and so on. And also helping people to communicate the benefits of the accommodations, how to match the nature of their disabilities with the accommodation they requested. Basically, to communicate to the employer how those requested accommodations and helping them to complete the essential function of their jobs. Another important implication is providing training to enhance employees' efficacies in requesting workplace accommodations. So some role play can be very important. As I mentioned before, accommodation request process sometimes can be emotionally loaded. So having some practices prior people making the formal request can be very important. And also inform people, part-time employees, that they are protected under the ADA, and they are also eligible to request for accommodations. And the knowledge of those may enhance their efficacies in requesting accommodations. And then also educate the workplace on the benefits of workplace accommodations. So from what we have found from this study and also previous study, the accommodations, they can be cost effective, and especially it can reduce the training for newly recruited employees. They can reduce the turnover of staff. They can also employers can also receive tax incentives, and then also providing accommodations and to people with disabilities can also enhance work morale and also enhance workplace diversities. So in terms of research implications, we can also use some qualitative research to examine the impact of psychosocial factors on requesting and receiving accommodations on people with mental health disabilities. As I mentioned before, because of the invisible nature of mental health issues, I think the qualitative study result can provide some nuances in terms of better understanding how these factors impact people, their request or intention to request. And also, although we have included several important factors in the study, but there are some other important factors, for example, like their motivations, their needs, political skills, and coping strategies. Those can also be interesting factors that can be examined in future research. And last but not last, also interventions in enhancing psychosocial factors among people with disabilities, mental disabilities. And so that those interventions will helping them to take the lead, take the initiative, if necessary, to request accommodations to help them to get a job and also stay on the job. Okay, so that's my accommodation. So thank you for your attention. And I would like to answer any questions if you have.
Oh, thank you so much. This was so interesting. I put in to ask people if they have any questions that they'd like to ask, and I'm going to let them unmute themselves if they'd like to. But this was so interesting and so important and timely. If you were, and I want to thank you again, if you were to, start all over again with your lessons learned, what would you do differently?
Okay, yeah, this is obviously this is a very good question. I think one of the things which I would consider is the representatives of the sample, because I use the online recruitment strategies. I send out surveys to people from different organizations helping people with mental health related issues. Of course, this is really a time efficient and cost efficient way, but also there might be a lot of people, they might be excluded from the study. So for example, people who do not have the internet access.
Yes.
People who may be not listed on those, listserv or maybe newsletters, they were not able to participate in the study. And as you can see, that majority of the people in this study were full time, which may not necessarily true among all the people with mental health issues.
Mm-hmm.
So if I do have a chance, I really want to using multiple recruitment strategies so that to make my samples more diverse and also can represent the patterns in the population.
Beautiful. Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. So one of our attendees asked, and I'm going to pose this question for him, is there any relationship between mental health severity and asking for accommodations? Good question.
Yes. So obviously there is. I think if you're looking from the some of the social factors which I included in this study, one may be the self-efficacy. So maybe one's levels of the mental health disabilities might distort about their perceptions about their ability to request. In some cases, they may be overestimate their abilities. In other situations, they may be underestimate their abilities. But in both cases, they may, if not guided or maybe working with rehab professional well, they might impact their outcome of workplace accommodations request. And also, again, with the outcome expectations, again, it might also have impact their outcome expectations in either way, which may not representing the reality of the workplace situations. So I assume that, maybe the more severe mental health illness that may have some more major impact on their requesting accommodation. So maybe in that case, rehabilitation professionals might step in and helping people to understanding the nature of their disabilities, but also the type of the accommodation they requested, they will request, and helping the people with mental health issues to understand how to match their request accommodations with the type of their disability, and explain to the employer how those accommodations may helping them to complete the essential function of their jobs.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for that. That was very thoughtful response. And I want to thank all of our attendees today. We're going to be signing off now. We will have this as a recording, so you can share it with others or listen to it again. And I just want to thank you all for being here, and I want to thank our speaker. You did such a great job, and we even had tech challenges, and it came through so beautifully. So thank you, and I hope people are reading the work journal. Go on to our website, which is workjournal.org. And I always like to thank iOS Press, who sponsors this Learn at Work webinar series. So thank you again, everyone, and I wish you a meaningful remainder of the day.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for everyone.